Thank you for your questions about Wells Fargo. As far as my claim against them in the Federal District Court goes, I will leave that up to the courts to decide. And number two, pertaining to Wells Fargo policy, I'll share a few things that I felt were a really huge moral burden for me. And I decided the best way to respond to your questions was just to come out here and share with you. I'll try to be very brief. Number one, I found it a huge moral burden for me to be responsible for the bank's failure to protect the elderly. I found it also a very heavy moral burden for me to carry, for the bank to treat the customers differently as far as reversing the late fees on the accounts. And the third, the fourth, and the fifth issues I'll set aside for now. Now, going back to the elderly. There was one lady who was in her early 80s. She didn't know what had been happening on her account. She claimed she was not responsible for the charges on the account. And so did the lady who was with this elderly lady when I called their home. I wanted to follow up on this and have some steps taken in order to make sure that, corrective action was in place. My team lead, the supervisor, none of them agreed with me. Instead, this caused me to be ostracized at work and to further be treated differently. I kept thinking, how do you expect anybody to help you in exploiting the elderly? Especially a big bank like Wells Fargo. Instead of protecting the very fragile, the most fragile people in our community, these are the ones you took advantage of. And you want people like me to support you in this. That was one of my concerns with Wells Fargo policy. And number two, the exploitation on the late fees. Okay, so in one area, Wells Fargo said, if a customer calls, makes a payment, and asks that their late fee be reversed, you could reverse it. And yet you have somebody else, and I'm going to use an elderly person again. You have somebody else who's making a payment but is not asking to have a fee reversed. What do you do about them? Who's going to place that request for them? You also have other people that you can voluntarily waive late fees for them. You can offer to waive the late fees for them. But then Wells Fargo had another aspect of their policy, still on the same floor, but having all these different standards of operation. To others, you can tell them, if you pay, then I will do this. And my question with this was, how are you setting a condition for this customer to say that if you pay, I'll reverse the fee, and yet with the others, you don't set the condition? Can you expect people like me to work for you in this? Don't you? Again, on the late fees. I'm talking to the customer on the phone, and they tell me, how come I owe more than I should? What's going on the account? It looks like it's slightly over by such and such an amount. I do the calculations. I find out the customer is right. And somebody comes over to my desk and says, well, we have a ghost fee. I'll tell you what a ghost fee is. Ghost fee is here in a second. The way that this dilemma is resolved is by dodging the customer's question. And again, why do you recruit people to come and work for you in your moral ambiguities? Why do you do that? Is it because you know the courts won't be involved? in your policy making? Now, the customer sees, okay, that's a late fee. This is what's causing the discrepancy on your account. The customer knows, and I know the account is not late yet, but we already put a late fee on it. And why did that happen? The explanation I got was, it's a ghost fee, it's going to fall off. But the issue is, why do you put a late fee on the customer's account before the account is actually due? And why do you expect to recruit people to support you in this type of filthy business? Is it because the law does not legislate morality? Is that what it is? Anyway, I'll stop here for now. There's a lot that I could go into, but let us wait and see what the courts decide.